I'd like to welcome everybody to our Gardening Unplugged today, and today we're going to talk about foliage textures. So it's a little different subject than we've addressed before, and it goes to something we'll talk about next weekend, which is more of the entire encompassing of design. But foliage textures in a garden are really one of the three main elements of the garden. We have colors, textures, and forms, and that's really how we go about designing a garden in terms of how we put those plants together. Textures is something that's sort of hard to define, but most artists, people come up with the idea there's fine textures, there's coarse textures, and there's medium textures. Medium is everything between fine and coarse. Textures also contribute to form. Form is the three-dimensional version of textures. It's what does a plant look like in a three-dimensional form. So I want to just walk around today and show you sort of how we've used textures together. To get the most dramatic appearance in the garden, a lot of people focus on flowers or color, and that's where everybody starts, and you really have to get to a much higher level of garden sophistication before you really appreciate textures, because everybody first of all looks, does it flower? What does the flower look like? How long does it flower? We're more interested in the foliage. What is the foliage like? The foliage is generally going to last much longer than the flowers. So let's just go around and look at some plants. We'll start with, let's start right here with the blue-eyed grass. This is a plant called Cicericum. So this would be what we call a fine texture in terms of plants. Behind that over here, you'll see the very bold, that would be the coarse texture. That is a mayapple. It really makes a plant stand out better, the bold texture, by having it up against the finer texture. But everything else is medium in between. So how do you look at those textures as we go through? One plant, or one group of plants that I really like for fine texture are the ferns. I think ferns are an absolutely amazing plant, and they really allow us to make some great combinations in the garden. If we were coming up there, you'll see the, if y'all stand here, I'm gonna just step over here and I'll grab a couple leaves. But here we've used the sanguinaria, the bloodroot, by the fern. So here we're contrasting the fine texture to the coarse texture together. And that's where you get those things that really jump out. Textures are something that are always changing in the garden. So plants that come up may look one way, they may change to the other. So that's the dynamics of the garden. To me, that's the most interesting part. To others, it's the most aggravating part, because plants don't always look the same. If you look back here in the middle, you'll see that this has sort of a gap. It doesn't really look right because we have really more medium textures here together. Well, the plants that have the very unusual flower will come out next with a very coarse textured leaf that will be this big. So while right now you may look past that, we hope to draw your eye away to other things, and then when that leaf does come up after the flower's finished, then that texture changes. So it's that dynamics of the garden that can be, like I say, fascinating but yet aggravating. So here we have the coarse texture to use as an anchor. And that's what coarse textures are, because the coarse textures, again, when you put that together in terms of form, you've got a very bold texture. And bold texture is what stops your eye. If you ever in the garden want to stop your eye and make somebody focus on it, use the coarse texture or the bold form. And that's again what we've done here with this Fatsia. Up against it, we've got more of the ferns, which is sort of a medium to coarse texture. I would say for ferns, that would be a medium. If you look down here at the grasses, that would obviously be a fine texture. We're really big on carex. There's a few plants better than ornamental grasses that can give you a fine texture in the garden. Now you combine then the textures with colors and turn right around, and let's look back here. In the back corner, you see that brings your eye in. So that is a coarse texture, that is a hydrangea. But it is also, we've added the color, so that is a gold-leafed hydrangea. That's one called hydrangea quercifolia little honey. But see how that just draws your eye and it makes your eye stop. So that's the neat things we can do with texture. So texture and form go together, but not always. So here's an example. This is what I would call a medium texture plant. This is a ligustrum, but yet the form is very broad, so it's very bold. So that again, even though the texture is medium, the form stops your eye. So let's just walk through and let's just look at some. Now we do think about that actually when we put plants in the ground. Is it 100% perfect like you would if you were painting a picture? No, because it's living beings, it's living plants. Hostas, coarse texture, bold form as well. So again, stops your eye. Now what I should have here is some ferns around that to break that texture, to make that jump out even more. And we're constantly adding things as we walk through and we say, oh, what are we missing? We're missing that fine texture here, or a carex. It's very much, gardening with textures and form is very much of an art form. For those of us that have no talent artistically, the great thing about plants, when you screw up, you just take a shovel and you move it to a new location. So again, every time you see a hosta, bold texture, bold form, stops your eye. And see a great example like we had with the hydrangea. This is a gold form, so that bold texture, bold form, and eye stopper because of the color. It brings your attention to that. So it's combining those three elements together is what makes the garden really work. Here's a really interesting plant that I like called chloranthus. This is sort of a prehistoric plant, and I love this because of the bold texture, the bold form again brings in and stops your eye. You'll also see a lot of mayaples here. Right in the middle there, you see that very large leaf? That is used fantastically to stop your eye in the garden. Now that needs some ferns around it. That's a great example of where that would really work better if we filled in with, say, some maidenhair ferns all around the base of that. So we're constantly going back and adding. Again, by using a medium texture here up against the bold texture of the Orostrophe hybrid, look how that really brings that out. Whereas if you did not have this around it, that would not be nearly as eye-catching. Now here we have, again, bold texture, but we also have a very interesting form. This is it's a giant Mexican frostweed. So that changes as it continues to grow. In another month or another couple weeks, that'll be 8 foot tall. So that will be the stop your eye, which also it already is in terms of bold textures. It brings your eye, but your eye now can go around that. And once that comes up, that fills in. And then we've got the carex and finer things in front of that to make that look even more bold than it already does. You'll see a lot of carexes throughout the garden. There's just very few plants. I tell people if you can't design, if you really have no idea how to use those, buy a lot of carex. Anything that doesn't look good, put a carex in the middle of it. And that just really softens that because that texture is so incredibly fine. One of my favorite for the woodland garden is this. This is an asparagus fern. This is Asparagus virgatus. It's one of those great plants it's a large plant, so it takes up space, but it has an incredibly fine texture. And this is pretty much evergreen through most winters here. So we love to tuck that in around the garden, especially when you have larger plants, because if you have a larger plant, you need something of equal size to contrast the textures with. We also use a lot of acubas, especially in the woodland garden. I would consider the texture probably a medium to coarse, but the form gives you a very broad, again, eye-stopping element in the garden. We talked earlier, we pointed out a mayapple. Here's another one. This is one we call standing tall, which I think is absolutely great. Again, that incredible bold texture. Now, if we actually have a fern planted at the base, and that will eventually ring this to help really set off how bold the texture that is. And as I talked about earlier, things always change. So here right now we have a bold textured ground cover. This is a Japanese primrose. In another month, that will be gone. That will disappear. That will go dormant for the year. So it's this constant change, and that's what's really, again, to me, fascinating. It's like putting a changing puzzle together. Puzzles are easy when the pieces stay the same. Not so easy when the pieces are constantly changing. But that to me is the joy of being able to assemble a garden using textures and forms. Now, as you notice, we haven't really looked at anything with flowers on it today, which is why everybody, again, I laugh, everybody looks at flowers first, but yet it's the foliage that really matters. So here we have a fern. This is a Woodwardia fern, which is not fine textured at all. So not all ferns are the same. This is much more of a medium, not quite a bold texture, but very much a medium to bold. And so you can use ferns in so many different ways in the garden. And here, if you look from here, this is a fine textured fern. This is the Arachnoides or upside down fern. Very fine textured, and then behind it, the Farfugium with a very bold. And that's what makes this combination so dramatic. You see, as we've done here, we've used bold, fine, bold, and just repeated that textures as we go through the garden. Just take a look as we just walk through here at the different textures. We've got Carex Greyi here in the front. We got another Farfugiums with the bold texture back here, fine texture here, and then with another sort of a medium texture here. The coral bells and the iris, I think, provide a really nice textural contrast. So design is really much more theoretical than it is, and I hope what you will do today is take some pictures of combinations you like and then go back home and see how you can do similar things. It's not that you want to copy everything we do, but understanding how the textures and forms work together. So as you walk through here, again, the fine texture of the Carex used to really dramatically enhance things like the Akubas that we have here, the hostas. Between the hostas here, what do we have? Ferns. To provide that really nice contrast. And we used here, because diversity is our key, 3 different ferns, each with very different textures. The maidenhair, the autumn fern, and the bamboo fern. Any questions as we go? Just really trying to point out ideas. Here, same thing. We've used the bold texture of the hosta, and I would say this would be a medium texture fern. But the fern is to the height that it also serves, the hosta stops the eye, and then the fern gives it a backdrop. So it really sets off that bold texture. Things like the trilliums, which have finished flowering, but look at the foliage. Very bold texture, and again, your eye I like to have places where your eye can stop, where you're directed to. But look here. Here we've used the Carex around the wild ginger. To me, that brings out the wild ginger. See, here we don't have it. But that is much more dramatic because we have that contrast between very fine and bold together. And then here's how we add color into that even without flowers. So this is the Japanese painted fern. It's got, I would consider that a medium textured fern. This is a really neat combination in the spring with the trilliums because you're picking up some of that subtlety of colors and you have the very dynamic contrast in textures. And just every little vignette, we work very carefully to make sure that each little vignette has the same textural. So I always start with a two-plant combination. And I use my little viewfinder. It's like, how do those two plants look together? And if they look good, then I will back out a little bit, and I get 3 plants in it. Then I get 5 plants in it, and then keep backing out. That's how I design. It's nothing, I've never seen that written in a book, but that just makes sense to me because you start with the small text. If you start on a big scale, it's overwhelming. We don't do anything on paper because that's just not, I'm not wired to be able to design on paper. I design by sitting here doing this. Those two plants look together, the sizes are going to be right, and then we just keep backing out till we get a broader picture. Question?
When you're getting started, do you tend to go for the fine or the bold texture as your first?
We tend to design very different way because we are a collections-driven garden. Most people design from a design perspective. We like bold textures, we like this. We have one greenhouse that every time we acquire plants, they go in there. So when I get to design a new garden, I go and see what plants I have that I have to find a home for. So we come at it very differently. When you go to botanic gardens and arboretum, they're either a collections-driven design, a collections-driven garden, or a design-driven garden. We try to combine the two, which is really sort of weird. That's hard to do because I'm limited in each bed by what I have that needs to go in the collections, not by design. So we come at it from a very different angle than a normal person would. Now, you may just be a person who loves to acquire cool plants, and you may design very similar to that. You're like, oh, look what I bought. Let's figure out a place for it. You always want to start with the large scale. So the first thing we came in is put in the trees. And then we put in the shrubs. We sort of design like you would a house, the inside of your house. You've got the ceiling, you've got the walls, you've got the floor. Then you put in the furniture. Then you put in the decorations. So I wish people would really start thinking about their gardens the same as you would the inside of your house. And then again, then we start, all right, here's the corner of this room. We've created the room. Now you go in and it's like, all right, I like this picture here. I like these draperies with this tablecloth. And go from that. I like this type of dishes on my table. That's the way I view design. The same way people would do houses, but we so often don't think of gardens as the same way as we do inside, but it's the exact same principles. Does that make sense? And again, just again, take vignettes and look how the vignette was put together. Is everything perfect? No, we're always changing. That's the beauty of gardening. There is no right and wrong. It's what appeals to you as a gardener. And again, if you get tired of it and you say, well, I don't like that, I need to add something in there, you always just go out with a shovel and do that. So here would be sort of a medium texture but in terms of texture, but in terms of foliage, it gives you a bold appearance because it masses. This is a toad lily. But it's not as bold as this. So your eye always goes to this first, and then it goes to this. There's so many incredible textural plants, both in sun and shade. Now, we just happen to be walking in shade today. One of my favorites is the shredded umbrella plant. This is the genus Sinalesis. It's got a medium texture, but a bold form. So it brings your eye in, but the texture is great because the leaves are shredded.
Wonderful.
And this texture looks very different now because we have the native mayapple and the native maidenhair fern. In another month, all the mayapple will be dormant here. Whereas the Asian ones stay up, the native ones go dormant. Then this looks completely different. Then we have other things that would pop up in here. So it's that beauty of change again. I would consider this a fine texture, but not particularly a fine form. This is one of the clumping bamboos. We love bamboos because again, you get a texture unlike anything else in the garden. Most of these are going to mature in the 7 to 8 foot range. There are a few that are much taller, but generally that's what you get. But a really lovely form, and it gives you a very different feel. Fine textures give you a completely different feel than bold does. If you want to relax and use a lot of fine textures, you want to go wow, use a lot of bold textures, and then accent with everything in between. Again, a plant we've talked about a lot, Farfugium. Bold texture, bold form. And what do we have around it? Ferns. This is a ribbon fern. And that's what really makes that plant jump, is what we put around it. I think I've probably almost used my time up. Do we have any questions? Hopefully this gives you a little bit of idea, a little bit of things to think about. Just look at the combinations. Here, the hosta, using the ferns, using the hardy impatiens around it. Just as you walk through, I hope this will allow you to look at things with a very different eye as to how things are put together. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.